Welcome, everybody, to our latest Coffee and Conversation. This is the third of our quarterly series. We will have one more somewhere around the holidays, and we'll look forward to sharing that with you. That's going to be turkey, gravy, and family financial conversation, something like that. So looking forward to that. But today, we are really fortunate. We're going to talk about what you wish your parents told you about money, and I have a very special host in Scott Landry. Scott's a graduate of Potomac School, and he recently started a grad year at Montverde Academy in Central Florida. So we wanted this opportunity to support the next generation of investors. So Scott was tasked as a Argent Bridge summer intern with reaching out to his peers and family members to gather questions, thoughts on finances, anything he thought relevant to share from our Gen Z or Zoomers. So, Scott, welcome, first of all.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into it, I just want to mention for our attendees, not sure if you're tuning in for your children, your grandchildren, or for yourselves, there are timelines that we look at in terms of educating younger people about money. We're going to focus in one area. So, but we do have great resources. If anybody came hoping that we talk about, maybe how we introduce money to younger children, we have some thoughts on that, and we're more than happy to share. Or even grade school, the idea of the opportunity costs of money, or the trade-offs between saving your money, investing your money, and so on. We have some great resources. We're happy to share those. But for today, our focus is going to be, as I said, on that Gen Z, the teen to college young adults, ages like 18 to 25, because it's pivotal. This is the focus here is time to get serious about mastering your money. We have a number of really important key aspects that we're going to get into with Scott. He's spent a lot of thoughtful time on the primary issues, decisions, things that might be helpful for everybody that we're going to jump into now. Is that fair, Scott? Are we on the same page? Are we ready to go?
I think we are on the same page here.
Good. So we tasked you with sort of putting together thoughts from your peers. We used my own family, we used client families, and we asked some questions and sort of broke our considerations into several categories. Do you want to touch on that, like what you're going to share? And in the end, when we're done discussing, we're going to share, I think, a really great visual about the power of saving and compounding.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think, three things that I really wanted to share today, and three takeaways that I had come in the different stages of money. So, you have earning money, and then you have budgeting and spending, and then you have saving and investing. And these are really three of the key areas. And so first off, I find that when you're, as a teenager, you want to go out and earn money, having a summer job is really important because it teaches you the value of money and the trade-offs that you have to make in order to earn money. For example, you're a kid, you're going out, you're working 8 hours, you make $80. When you go out and you spend that $80, whether it's at the movies or at Chipotle or at a concert venue with your friends, that $80 moves really fast. And then you're thinking, wow, that's another 8 hours of work that I have to spend. So it's creating this discipline around money. And that's something that I'm going to mention again and again, is you're creating a discipline around money. So, and really you're having this firsthand experience of understanding the opportunity cost of money. And I think that things like chores and a summer job are crucial to helping you understand that as a kid. And that's, sort of building financial responsibility and this discipline of money. And
so when we talked about that idea of earning, there's lots of different ways to earn money, obviously, but you also touched on the idea of how, and ask the question about how your peers treat money when they earn it versus when it's their parents' money, right?
Yeah, so that was one thing that I talked about with a lot of friends is that's one thing that I noticed. When I was earning my own money, that's your hard-earned money. You know, you've spent hours, you woke up early for that money. You know, you stayed late for that money. And so when I'm talking to my friends, they're like, "Yeah, you know, my money, I'm spending that differently than my parents' money because you know the feeling of working hard for that." And what it's really about is creating this singular view of, you know, it's not your money here and your parents' money here. It's about spending them both in the same capacity. And that's something that my friends are also working on as well. You know, we've talked about it.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure that we distinguish that, and that in fact, that's real. What we as parents see in terms of the thoughtfulness that goes into spending what you earned, and not to say that it's it's specifically that black and white, but that there's just more focus on saving or thoughtfully spending money that you earned versus, you know, using a credit card that your parents gave you as an example.
I completely agree. And, you know, when you swipe a credit card, you're not visually seeing the money leaving your account. And so it's much
Right.
easier. You know, if you're using Apple Pay and you're tapping your phone, really, you know, understanding the concept of, oh, this money is leaving my bank account. So that's a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, excellent. And maybe just the idea that when like you said, you've worked hard for it, you've put the hours in, it might just be a more natural sort of expectation that you're going to think about it. So for parents, maybe it's a great reminder to encourage your kids, right? To earn money, get a job. There's dozens of ways to make money at different ages. You don't have to wait until after high school or after college to secure something. You can start working weekends, right? Summer jobs and so on, much like you did.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, you could be, you know, a nanny at a young age and then, you know, maybe a lifeguard. And there's tons of avenues as kids today, lots of flexibility and accessibility to jobs. So
And back to the parents for just a minute. I mean, I think the other takeaway here is I think I think young adults are paying attention to how their parents spend money. So responsible money habits for all of us would be advisable, especially, you know, having the conversations about what you earn, how that money is going to be allocated, the idea of what, remember we looked at with your paycheck, what the impact of taxes were on your earnings, paying into Social Security. And later we'll talk about the idea of what benefits are provided when you get out into the workforce and taking advantage of that. So you're not keeping every dollar you earn either before we even get into spending, right?
I remember that. I remember getting my first paycheck at Argent Bridge and I saw I was like taxes. And that was sort of something that I hadn't really considered before. And and you know, thinking about the hours that I had worked, I was expecting to have more money. I was expecting to be able to use more money on the weekend or save more money on the weekend. And that was something that I had not considered.
Awesome. Okay, so next, so first we earn it.
Yep.
Then where did you go? Where did your discussions and conversations lead?
So then from earning, well, the next step after earning money is generally spending. So we talked about spending and budgeting and sort of, again, that mindset around discipline with money. And a lot of my friends were talking about, okay, I'm going to college. We're going to college. You know, how can we be budgeting in college? And one of the things that we talked about and we felt was really important was using our resources that are available to us in college. So when you're in college, you have access to a gym, you have access to a dining hall normally, under some sort of plan, and you have resources in a library. And sometimes we feel that we may not be using those to our advantage. You know, we may be going out and getting Starbucks in the morning instead of using dining halls properly. We may be doing something online instead of being in the library on the Wi-Fi. Certain small changes in habits can be very effective when it comes to being disciplined with money. Because if you go out and get Starbucks, once or twice a week, that can really add up. And it goes back to that concept that I had talked about with my friends, and I had talked about with a few people about the small no's for the big yeses. It can't be everything all the time. And my friends, they really thought this was very important. It's, you have to be disciplined. Can't be everything all the time. You have to be willing to give up small things so that on the weekend,
Yep.
you can go out to a concert venue. You may not be able to get Chipotle 3 times during the week with your friend, but then that weekend you can go out and do something fun. And that's what it's really about, is being disciplined with your money when you're a kid.
And thinking about trade-offs. I think that
Yes.
you said it,
Mhm.
little no's for the big yes. That's all a way of saying there are trade-offs. I would say, it's great that you're thinking that way, because I'm not even certain that everyone understands that it's not everything all the time. This idea of getting disciplined around a budget means today it might be a decision between Chipotle and tickets to a concert, but later it's going to be saving for later versus spending the money now. In other ways, saving for retirement, saving for a car, saving for a home, and much bigger yeses, right? And maybe even bigger no's to delay the spending for something that's much more important. So it's a great
Absolutely.
discipline to learn now.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to how foundational this period is for developing financial success. Um, and again, I would say that parents, you can really aid this. Being a strong role model, that helps, because your kid has someone to look to, and they're seeing their parents practicing strong financial habits, and they aspire to be like that as well.
Excellent. So that's budgeting. Now, give us again some thoughts, insights about once we've all acknowledged we're earning it, we're spending it in particular ways. Now, what about the allocation to saving? Your
Yes.
thoughts on obviously avoiding debt. We talked a little bit about that, but about expectations around that, but spend a little time on that too. The basics, banking and credit cards, and then allocating for savings. It's just your thoughts around that.
So I think savings was one of the things that actually um, I felt like my friends and I didn't understand the most. Um,
Wow.
you know, in terms of when to open a credit card to start developing your own line of credit. Um,
Yeah.
in terms of, a brokerage account or a savings account versus a retirement account. When are you opening which account, and how much are you allocating towards each account? And, one thing that we thought was really important was just saving now, emphasize saving now, because, later on, there are more obligations that you have. And so when you're able to save now, that is a really important thing, because it develops this habit of, okay, I'm gonna, out of my Argent Bridge paycheck, I'm gonna set up 25% is just gonna go straight into my brokerage account. And that is gonna be invested. So, I'm not every month, I'm not gonna think about it. It's just gonna go straight in there. And that really just creates this habit of, okay, a little bit is going to be spent and a little bit is going to be saved. And that again goes back to creating discipline around money. And then, what are you doing with that money? It's really important at this age to begin understanding, to begin to have an understanding of the stock market. The stock market is something that plays a huge role in the lives of people and their retirement and their management of money these days. And so, as a teenager, can you start to understand just a little bit about how the market works? And one thing that I found was super helpful was fractional shares. or starting to get invested. And my parents did this with me. And I felt like when I owned $5 or $10 of Apple, I was suddenly paying a lot more attention to Apple and how it was doing.
Yeah.
So, between classes, I'm checking, oh, look, Apple's up today. I made a little more money today. And you just start to learn a little bit more about the market over time.
I don't know if you dived into this at all, but I just recently, before we tasked or after we tasked you with this, I just read an article that Gen Z are more likely to associate investing with gambling. 69% of Gen Z potential investors have gambled online, which is really different than generations past, because that opportunity didn't exist, that you could gamble on, sports bets on your phone and that sort of thing. So how would you guide your friends, your peers, to distinguishing long-term saving and investing from this concept of gambling? And I don't mean to throw that at you, but I'm curious
No,
about.
no, no, not at all. And I think that's actually a great point, because when, I mentioned the stock market, some of my friends will say, oh, isn't that kind of like gambling your money away, like sports betting, you're just putting your money
Yep.
there and you don't really know what's going to happen. And I would say, if you are stock picking, absolutely it could be gambling, because, as a kid, you might not really understand the market. But the beauty is that we have, very large, commonly followed equity index like the S&P 500, the 500 largest companies in the world, again, most commonly followed. And this is just a very simple way to invest your money. Invest in the S&P 500, and you can leave it to be. You don't have to have an incredible understanding. You don't have to have in-depth knowledge. You just know the S&P 500.
Excellent. We have a question coming in, Scott, so I want to give you this. The comment is, it's easy to give up the small no's, but what strategies can you recommend for giving up regular large yeses for even bigger yeses in the future? A great question. Yeah.
That's
I mean, I'm
fantastic.
not sure how one views a big yes or a little yes or a small no or a big no, but just give me your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, I can try to answer a little bit about that, and I'll try to use some sort of analogy in my terms. So I think of, bigger yeses for huge yeses. So huge yes might be something like a vacation. A bigger yes might be something like going out to the mall, or going out to, a soccer game on the weekend. And one of the things that I find at a young age is that it's really very, very easy to find things to do that do not require a lot of money. And this is something that I will go back to again and again with my friends. We love to go on hikes. We love to do things outdoors. There are people that are into lots of different things, but as a kid, it might take a little bit more energy to find something that doesn't require, $20 or $30. But if you are able to be disciplined and find something to do, with your friends, that doesn't mean you're going out to Chipotle, or doesn't mean you're going out to a concert, then you can save that money and you can be putting that towards, okay, my friends and I want to go to on a spring break trip. That's our huge yes. And so you might not be able to go to that one concert. You might not be able to go out to dinner, but you are saving that and you are putting it towards a much bigger goal. And I would say that it's a very challenging thing to do. But if you can collectively do it, I think that's the best way to approach it, because one person, it might be tough for them to do, but if you have a group of 3 or 4 and you're all sort of encouraging each other, that works really positively, in my opinion.
Accountability. That's great. Yeah, that's a first step. I like it. Great question. Thank you for the question. And just to piggyback on one comment on your point about how it's not that complicated to get started investing, especially with broad indexes or fractional shares. I will share, and the reason that we wanted to have this coffee and conversation today is that in that same education piece on Gen Z investors, 42% of non-investors said they lack the knowledge to invest. So hopefully we give people a little courage today. But tell me a little more about that, Scott, in terms of, while I agree there are very low barriers to entry to start investing in indexes or fractional shares, but even a step one in terms of opening an account or saving versus investing. Can you just spend another minute on that?
Absolutely. And I think it can be a very intimidating process, because it's like you're a teenager or you're in college and suddenly you're stepping up into the big leagues with people that manage money for a living. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be intimidating. There's lots of information out there on YouTube. And mind you, you have to be mindful of where you're getting your information from. So make sure it's a reputable source. But at the same time, there's a ton of information out there. And really all it requires is a couple simple Google searches. And you can open a brokerage account very easily. And they also have something called paper trading. And this is something that I actually used when I started to invest a little bit, is just to get an idea of how the market functions. You can trade with paper money. And this is, at no harm to you or your money. And you can just sort of see how things work. Okay, I'm going to put, 100 fake dollars into Apple. Let me see where it goes in 2 weeks. And then as you start to get familiar with it, then you can shift to a real brokerage account. And I think that really helps lower that level of intensity in terms of intimidation, because you get very familiar with it.
We just got an excellent additional question, Scott. So boy, I thank everybody for these questions. I really get what we're trying to share today. This question says, and I think it relates back to the idea of spending versus saving and big yeses, little nos. It says, do you have recommendations to resist peer pressure, i.e. friends who may have carte blanche from their parents? That's excellent, especially in this area. We've talked about it, you and I.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Actually, I do really like that question. That's a tough thing. That is a tough thing. And the thing about those people is that it can depend if it's like you're a part of a friend group and there's one of the members of the friend group is sort of carte blanche, or one of the people you hang out with is sort of free from their, free with money and can spend freely. That can be an easier situation to manage, because it's about accountability. You have other friends that you can manage. You all can manage your own money your own way. And I would say that it's really a personal situation. Money is a personal situation. So watching someone spend very freely, in the back of my mind, I just try to remember that is not a positive financial habit. And at some point, that is going to become difficult for that person. And I want to create positive financial habits. But in terms of giving in, just try your best not to give in. And if that person is spending freely, maybe mention something to them in terms of, oh, let's not go to Chipotle today. Let's go make sandwiches at home. Or, maybe make some other suggestions. And then, if that doesn't work, just let them do their own thing. And then you do your thing, because money is a very personal concept.
Great. Another question, and this maybe is more for me. This is, what is Argent Bridge take on kid accounts? Are there minimum values? How small is too small? What about fees? We are more than willing to support anyone in the family who wants to establish an account, even if it's a retail account. How we'd go about that is just providing the resource. When it comes to the investment accounts we have for our clients and their kids, it varies. There are children's accounts because of years of gifting that actually are valuable, and we carve off a small part of that and work with the children in terms of what their interests are, how they want to invest. We have some really An example would be a client whose children are very interested in socially responsible investing. So we try to steer towards resources and research and that sort of thing. But establishing an online brokerage account, an online Roth IRA, relatively straightforward, and we can support anybody that's curious about that in setting that up. It's whether or not they want our help with the investments or they want to explore that on their own. We would establish it one way or another, but completely supportive of that. And I don't think anything is too small, right, Scott? I mean, you could invest as little as $50 or $100. I don't think that there's any number too small.
Absolutely. My younger brother, I actually set him up with, I put in $10 and he put in $10 and we bought some fractional shares for him just in a very small account, just to familiarize him with the process
Exactly.
of how the stock market works. Super simple, super easy, takes very, very little.
Awesome. And great questions. Again, okay, so back to, and just in the interest of time, I know that you probably have to get to class, so we're going to focus on just two more things, and that is, I want to share your interesting chart on a path to $1 million. But before we do that, I want to spend a few minutes on post-college and the things to think about when your first job or when you first join the workforce. You want to spend a few minutes on that?
Yes. So I'm super fortunate. I have an older sister who just got into the workforce. And so I had a fantastic conversation with her about what intimidated her when she was taking that leap from college to the workforce. And she said, there was a lot that I really didn't understand. And that came in the form of things like employee benefits, these benefits that are associated to jobs and how you can take advantage of them. And here you might have job A with strong benefits and job B with strong benefits. Which one should you take? And that's a really important consideration to make. Things like
Absolutely.
retirement, understanding that your company may have a company match. And so things like creating a plan to invest x percentage into what maybe you're investing 2% or you're investing 4% into a 401k, and setting up a recurring contribution so you don't have to think about it, and then
Yeah.
taking full advantage of a company match.
Exactly. The idea of a company match means you're basically, for the first, let's call it 4%, you have a 100% return on your money, because for every $1 you put in, they're matching it with another dollar. So 401k is probably first and foremost, and if nothing else. And there are some, Department of Labor has taken some great steps towards ensuring that everyone has access to retirement accounts, and also that there's a default that has you participate, rather than, because you won't miss those dollars if you get started with 401k savings as soon as you start to earn the money. You will not miss. For every dollar you're putting in a 401k, you would have only taken home about 70 cents of that because of state taxes and Social Security and FICA, et cetera, federal taxes. So participating in the 401k, if nothing else, for our early investors who are beginning in the workforce, participate in your 401k, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And then also, taxes and having an understanding of, which tax bracket will you fall under? How much of your salary could be going to taxes. That's another important consideration to be making.
And we have resources here to help every client's children make decisions on employee benefits, and we'll have someone dedicated to that, which we'll share more about in the end of September timeframe. So more on that, but and I'm going to be, just in the interest of time, I want to share your path to $1 million, Scott, and
Absolutely.
get your closing comments. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Emily, who has a few things to share before we wrap up. So I'm going to share screen.
And when I was talking to my friends, and they were asking me about, how achievable is it to make money in the future? How achievable is it to invest? And I came across this graphic, And I showed it to them, and they thought it was really helpful just to understand how easy it is to build wealth when you start early and you're consistent. And so here's the graphic, a path to $1 million. And it just shows you, when you start early and you're investing often and consistently, the path to being financially stable and financially strong is a very simple one. And it doesn't have to be complicated. And all you have to do is start today.
Awesome. Awesome. I love this chart, and thank you for sharing it. It's obvious that someone in their 20s is putting away a much smaller amount of money to get to that $1 million versus someone at 50. So sooner the better. Really great. And you were really great, Scott. And bravo. We had an outstanding summer with Scott as an intern, and we appreciated that, and certainly appreciate all your insights today. Emily, I want to turn it over to you to sort of give people guidance about where to find this information later.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to answer that. And I do want to call out the one last question in the Q&A just while we have Scott. I feel like this is a good one for him to answer. But Scott, do you have any recommendations on good apps or websites for either personal finance or investing?
Yes. I started my first investments with Public. I thought it was a really easy brokerage setup, and it was very simple. I really liked the way it looked, and it made it very easy for me. So that Public, public.com, that's an app. That was my favorite for beginner investors. And then I would say there's a lot of good resources out there. The online banking apps are fantastic. And things that, there are apps out there like NerdWallet that can provide a lot of resource to you. Like when I was researching credit cards, it can show you, the best credit cards for students in college, the best credit cards for those just entering the workforce, in terms of providing benefits. So I think those two are fantastic resources.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. That concludes our topic of discussion today. Thank you so much to Diane and Scott for providing your insights and addressing some of the concerns with this taboo financial topic. In 2023, we as a firm at Argent Bridge Advisors are committed to sharing experiences, insights, and ideas for avoiding issues that may derail your successful long-term planning. From too good to be true offers to avoid, which Cecile addressed earlier this year, to family meetings about money, we intend to continue to share stories, offer resources, and hopefully provide a springboard for your own meaningful money conversations and decisions. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would love to keep the conversation going and hear your thoughts. Please reach out to us directly if you have any questions or additional thoughts on this edition of Coffee and Conversation. And be sure to join us in November when we discuss next quarter's topic, turkey, gravy, and financial conversations, with a focus on estate planning with your elder parents. Thank you all so much.
Emily, thank you. Thanks everyone for participating. And Scott, thank you. Really appreciate it.